Hello, I'm Leona Dooley, and this is Ebony, Ivy, and Thyme in the kitchen. And today in the kitchen, we're going to prepare first a buttery, flaky crust. And then we're going to make some apple hand pies. So if you're interested, stay tuned. I absolutely love the smell of apples and pumpkins and cinnamon and nutmeg. Those smells and fragrances of those spices and fruits just absolutely scream fall. We are going to start from scratch. We're going to take some apples that I purchased and we're going to get them prepared. We're going to caramelize them, and then we're going to make delicious apple hand pies. We are going to be using my Pioneer Woman food processor in order to fix this crust. And that's what's going to make it so easy to put together. But you know what? We're not quite ready yet. We've got something we need to do. So let's get to it. I have a saucer here and I am going to take a stick of butter and I'm going to cube it really small. So let's get that done. Taking it out of the wrapper. We're not going to need this wrapper at all. And the plan is to use the entire stick of butter. So what I'm first going to do is to cut it into fourths. Cut the whole stick, and it's pretty cold, but it's not frozen. We want it frozen because what's going to happen is that these little frozen pieces of butter are going to be placed throughout the crust, and that's what will make it buttery as well as make it flaky. We don't want to lose any of that goodness, so I am just taking this and cutting it up. And of course it's going to go into the processor, but we don't want to process for a long time. So that's why I'm making my little slices very small. And I'm going to place this whole plate into the freezer. I'm also going to place, make sure that I have a small cup of water. I'm going to fill it with ice cubes, and I'm going to place that into the water because later on we're going to need about 6 tablespoons of water for our crust. So I'm going to rinse my hands off. I'm going to put this into the freezer and then I'll bring you back. In my bowl, I'm going to measure out 2 cups of flour. Now, when we get ready to process this, because we're actually going to make the dough right there in the processor. So I'm using a 1/3 cup. A 1/3 cup. So that means I'm going to need 6 of these. That's 1. 2. 3, that's 1 cup. And let's get 1 more. 1, 2, and 3. There's our 2 cups of flour. Now, to this 2 cups of flour, let me put this away off to the side. We're going to add sugar and salt. Now, do we want our crust super sweet? No. But we will need for it to have some flavor. So we're going to add flavor. And I am going to add in we need, let's see, about a teaspoon of sugar. And if you decide you want to add more, that's up to you. But I'm going to add in, let's see, I may do 1, I think I'll do 2 teaspoons of sugar. All right, there's our 2. And I need a pinch of salt. because anytime you're cooking, what you're cooking always needs a taste of salt. And now it's time to start putting things into the processor. I have a cup with ice for the ice water. I have our flour, our sugar, and our salt in the bowl. All right, I have my flour in our processor, and I'm going to start to add our cold, frozen butter. So I'm going to put this in pretty quickly, try to get it all in. Then we're going to give it a couple little twirls, and then we'll pull it out, put it in a ball, and let it refrigerate for several hours. Okay, let's see if we're ready. Whoop. This is not our... Now, let me give you a quick review on this. I have an oyster processor, and to be honest with you, it does a much better job. This is just a little too All right, let's take the top off. Go around the sides. Okay, it's pretty crumbly. Now, we're going to add the water in. Get everybody in there. Let's get our 6 tablespoons. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So, ice water in. Let's make sure we have everybody locked. I think we do. And let's go. Okay. Okay, we've got nice, and when you look at this, you're going to go, what? Because everything looks so still floury, but it's not really. Now we're going to have to be really careful when we take this off. So now you know I'm all about convenience, and what I like to do is to put this into, you can use the cling wrap method. That's all well and good, but I like to be able to put this all together in my Ziploc bag, because it just eliminates the mess, all the flour all over the place. And as you can see, as I'm working with it, I'm just pressing it into a ball of dough. I'm going to take a little air out of it. Woo, there we go. All the air. And I am just putting that right into, there's our dough, our pie dough. So later, I'm going to refrigerate this because I want it to get solid again, because you know we've got butter in there. And then we'll roll it out and get it ready for our hand pies. Take your dough. It's already in the plastic bag, and you are ready to sit it in the refrigerator. Now, if you find that your dough looks a little too dry, you may want to add a couple of extra tablespoons of water, but no more than 2. That's it, only 2 additional tablespoons of water, because sometimes flour is just dry and it needs a little extra. Stop, and before we go any further, let me remind you, please, right now, go down to the like and click on like. And if you're not a subscriber to my channel, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button and also hit the notification bell so you will know every time I upload a video. Remember, we do things here at Ebony, Ivy, and Thyme in the kitchen, for the kitchen, so don't forget to like the video and to subscribe. Thank you. Now this is the easy part. I'm going to peel and dice about 2 bags of organic apples, which will give us about a dozen. And we're just, as you can see, I'm peeling them, taking the core out, and then I'm going to dice them. So this part of it is going to move along. You're going to need your wooden spoon. You're going to put it into a pot, and you'll see that I really overloaded this pot, to be honest with you. But what I did was that I dropped in a couple of heaping tablespoons of brown sugar and some granulated sugar. I did a little bit of both because I wanted the sweetness of the white sugar as well as a little bit of the molasses, because I'm going to let this continue to cook until these apples caramelize. And that's going to take a good 10 to 15 minutes. So we're just putting it right here on the stove. I'm going to take my wooden spoon and keep it handy, because about every couple of minutes you're going to want to come over and check it. And I haven't put anything else in this pot. And notice how the apples are starting to release their juices. And those juices are going to just sweeten up, and those apples are going to be perfect. So I am stirring and just checking it for, like I said, for about 10 to 15 minutes, because I want them to be nice and hot. And in fact, they're going to change color, and you're going to see, look at all of that juice. Now, I can tell you this, I'm not going to add this juice to the apples once they go into the pies, because it'll just make the pies too runny, and it'll be a runny mess. But what I am going to do is that I'm going to save this juice. I'm going to pour the apples, pour the juice off of the apples, and I'm going to let them bubble a little while, but I want the juice to come out. See, I'm taking them out, pouring the juice off, and I'm saving that juice. I'm going to use that juice when I make apple muffins, and you need a certain amount of liquid. That's the liquid I'm going to use. Or if I make an apple bread, I could make an apple cranberry bread, and I may need some moisture. So there it is. Or I could even add this to some tea, and it would be perfect. Now here we are. Our apples are ready. They are ready. Now I have to sit them off to the side. I'm going to eventually turn that stove off and sit them off to the side so they can cool, because hot apples in that dough will not work. It will just melt the dough right in your hand. And that's not what we want, because remember, we kept everything cold. Now, what I'm doing is that I'm adding some additional cinnamon. I'm putting in about 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, as I want a strong cinnamon flavor. Now, if you don't like a lot of cinnamon, you can certainly use just a little bit. I'm also adding a couple of dashes of nutmeg. If you want to purchase apple pie spice, you can do that. I just kind of put in the spices. I didn't have any allspice, so I didn't add that, and I didn't have any cloves, so I didn't add that either, and I'm okay with that. But I did make sure that I had plenty of cinnamon, plenty of nutmeg, and I also added in some additional butter. And the reason for adding the butter is so that that buttery flavor is going to be all through the apples. Now, so I'm putting it back on the eye because I want all of this to mix. I want the butter to get in those apples. And then you can decide, after this is all melted and ready, you can decide whether or not you want to prepare your hand pies immediately, or you could even take these apples already prepared and put them into a Ziploc bag once it cools and have them ready for an apple pie or an apple hand pie later. So you don't have to fix it tonight. You could certainly do that for however many people you happen to have in your house, but you don't have to. So I'm just stirring these up, making sure that the butter is throughout the apples. And you can see this is nice and hot. So I have a few jumping out of the pool, so I'm trying to get those up without burning my hand. But I do not want this to stick, and I definitely don't want it to burn. So that's the reason why I'm just continuing to give it a good stir. Anytime you're working with butter, you've got to make sure that you keep an eye on it and check it. And plus, we're dealing with a sweet substance which will burn easily if we walk away from it. So please, 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 please do not do that. Now, we could also use these apples in a cake, which would be really, really good. You could do an apple upside down cake, and I have that in my playlist for fall, in the fall comfort foods. And that apple upside down cake is the bomb. So you're going to want to try that out as well. So if you taste one and it's not quite where you want it, add a little more. Now I added a couple of little swooshes of vanilla. I like a little vanilla with my apples, and so I just put a little bit on there. Now I did it quickly, did it carefully. Most of the time what you will want to do, because it does have a little bit of an alcohol content, if you have a gas stove in particular, you're going to want to take that pot off the eye, add your vanilla, stir it up, and then put it back. But I can do what I'm doing because I have a glass top. Now, what I'm doing is that I'm taking some of these apples out and I'm spreading them out on the plate. I'm going to let them cool. And in fact, I'm going to sit that plate in the refrigerator so they can get nice and cold. So I'm going to add a little more vanilla to this because these apples are going to go in the freezer so that I can make something appley delicious later. They're going to be so good. So just a little bit. You could even add some rum. Oops, did I say that? Yes, you could. You could add a little rum or a little bourbon in at this point. And you know, bourbon would work out great because that's what you can use when you're making your own vanilla extract, bourbon and vanilla beans. Now, so my apples are there. I'm letting them cool just a minute because you won't want an extra hot plate of apples in the refrigerator. Well, I have taken the dough out and rolled it between 2 sheets of parchment paper, and using a glass I've just cut out the circles for our fried pies. And as you can see, I have quite a few here, And I will have some extra dough once I move these. But off to the side, I have the apples. Now you can see that I'm just using a pan, and I have lined that pan with parchment paper as well. And you know, my little circles are trying to stick. So what I'm going to do is just use this spatula to work them up off the surface. I didn't want to put down a ton of flour, but I did put a little bit down. So I have the first one ready, and I'm going to get about a heaping tablespoon of the apple mixture. And I'm trying to make sure that I don't have any of the juice. I just want the apples. So there's our first batch. And you know, it looks like it ought to be like it's not enough, but I promise you it's going to be more than enough. And you can see it trying to poke out there, but I'm going to have to work with that and just put down enough so I can lay this down and just press in on the edges of that little pie. Then I'm going to take my fork, and I am just going around the edge of the pie, sealing it with the fork, and I'm going to put in dots on top, which will allow the air to vent. Or if there's any little juice overflow, it will probably come out of that top rather than coming out of the sides. So we're on to the next one, and these are just thick enough that I can kind of play around with them. I sit it on the back, and after you get the first one done, you get the hang of it, but it will move along very quickly. So I'm just going to continue putting my little apple mixture into each one. You know, the cool thing about these pies is that you can use peaches, you can use, and you know, back in the day, you used the dried peaches or the dried apples, and that helped to control some of the juices. You'll see where some of the juice wants to ooze out no matter what. But you know what? We just work around it. So that's why I have my little flour there. And I'm just going to, I'm not going to let it stop me. And if you have a little tear, it's okay. I had one, and I just kept it moving. So I decided, well, maybe I better turn it over. So what I started doing as of this point was, not only did I take the fork and seal it on one side, but I'd flip it over and do it on the back side as well. So we're going to work through that. Now, you know, we had quite a bit of dough left over, and so I'm not about to throw that away. So we are going, and we have plenty of apples, absolutely plenty of apples. So we're going to get these prepared, and then we're going to make some more by rolling it out. And of course, we won't have nearly as many as we did the first time. We had those 4, but I think we got enough maybe to get 3 more, and you'll be amazed at how quick these pies are going to disappear. So here we have the little batch. I'm going to roll this out. I'm just going to press that into a little circle, and you know, they don't have to be perfectly shaped, but I'm just going to give it a good roll, enough to get a few. And you're going to laugh when you see what I used as my cutter. I used my Chinese takeout soup container because it was the perfect size, and that's what I'm going to use to cut them out. It made it just large enough. I didn't want them any smaller, and I didn't worry about whether or not it was perfectly round. Main thing was I wanted to make sure that I had enough surface that I could fold it over and put them together. So there we go. And you know, I think we might have enough for even one more. So I'm taking my finger and press it close, and let's get our fork. You see, it's trying to ooze on me. Don't let it get the best of you. and just use your fork and work your way around it, then flip it over and do it again. And it will seal it. But don't forget to put your holes, your vents, in the top. Now, I know you're thinking, well, this is probably it. Once we get everything in there, oh, we're going to be ready to stick it in that 350 oven. Not yet. We have 2 more things that we're going to need to do to these to make them absolutely perfect and to take them over the top. Now, while we're thinking about it, while we're finishing up with this one, and this is not the last one, while we're finishing up, you are going to want to keep them in a Ziploc bag, and if you have any left, and if you do, stick them in the microwave and warm it up. Oh my goodness, these are so good when they are warmed up in the evening. If you want a little dessert, they are good. So, little apple pies. You know, when it's just two or three of you in the household, even 4, you know, sometimes you just may not want to make a whole apple pie because you figure, oh, this is too much pie for us to eat, you know. And this way, you can make these little individual pies. Actually, at this stage, once you put them together, I could have stuck these into a Ziploc bag and froze them so that when I needed to, then I would just take them out and put them onto a sheet pan and prepare them. So I have plenty of apples. So if that's what I decide to do, I may certainly do that. So I'm going to fold this up, get this out of the way, because remember I said we're not finished yet. We are not finished. So we're cleaning up, we're getting things put away, because here's the cool part. We're going to put an egg wash on top of each of those little pies, and it's just going to make your pies absolutely beautiful. So there they are, and I'm going to play around with where they are just to make sure that everybody gets good coverage. And there we go. All righty. So I thought, well, I'll put the sugar on now, but you know what I realized? That's not going to stay. I got as much on the parchment as I did on the pie. Now I could have rolled it in the sugar a little heavier, but I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to sprinkle. So I'm going to get my egg. I'm going to add a little bit of water, and we're going to mix up an egg wash. So here we go. Let's take our egg. We're going to crack that egg and put it right there in the cup. I'm going to put just a smidget of water in there because unfortunately the egg itself is just a little too heavy. So I'm zipping up the apples that are left. I'm going to stick them in the freezer for later because we will need them later at another time. Now see those apples that are left, I can use in muffins. Oh man, the world is my oyster. I can just use them for all kinds of things. So let me get my brush, and we're going to be ready to brush these little pies. There we go. You see, there, they come out so pretty. And I had to play around with it because I put just a smidget of water in there, but it wasn't quite enough. I wanted it to be able to move a little easier. There we go. That brush is so much nicer. So I'd say probably about a teaspoon at least of water into your egg mixture. And you may need 2 teaspoons. Just depends on your egg and what size egg that you have. I had an extra large, and I think that's why I had to go back and add just a little more. So I probably put in about 2 teaspoons of water. And there we go. Now that we have our egg wash on these, they will hold the sugar. And you know, you would think because we're putting granulated sugar on them that they would get dark very quickly, but surprisingly they don't. They really don't. They get golden. It takes a while for them to cook. If you have any oozing, or if you have any sugar overage like I had, you may have some of that to get a little darker. But here we go. We got them. They're out. Let's take a look at them. So I am just wiggling them off the pan. I'm using that spatula again. And you can see where I had a little bit of oozing. And but let me tell you, they're hot and they are delicious. So they're right there ready to go. Aren't they beautiful? I love it. Well, you know what? I am absolutely ready to relax. And we have made those apple hand pies. And oh my goodness, not only were they pretty, but they taste great. And once you sprinkle the sugar on the crust, it just takes it right over the top. So don't let those apples get away from you. Get some now, get them sliced up, get them in your freezer, so when you're ready to have your apple hand pies, they'll be ready to go. So I'm so glad that you spent the time in the kitchen of Ebony, Ivy, and Thyme today. I hope that you will have a safe and blessed day. So I'll see you soon tomorrow in the kitchen.